Chris and Rick Talk Guitars Unplugged today. We're going to talk about acoustic guitar and how...
Wow.
Yeah. Because mostly I think Chris and I get in the electric phase where we're playing electric guitars all the time, even unplugged. I do that all the time, just knocking around the house, pick up an electric. I don't plug it in, but I plunk around on it. And I have my comfort zone, right, where I just play all my trite bullshit that I've played for years, and then I pick up the acoustic, and
there's a whole new world
Yep.
of trite bullshit waiting for you.
Yeah, my acoustic trite bullshit that I play. But Chris, you want to speak to like the fact that kind of cool dynamic of like playing an electric a bunch of times and then picking up an acoustic, and it's different.
No, it's totally different. It's a great way to switch things up if you ever feel like you're in a rut. I've just done that recently, which is why I've kind of like had the idea to talk about it. Is I got back from Michigan, a trip to Michigan, and I hung out with my brother, who's we share a love for like bluegrass music and old timey stuff, and he brought some instruments. He brought a banjo, mandolin, and an acoustic guitar. And from that trip, I came back with acoustic on the brain. So for the first time in quite a while, I pulled out my flat top, and I just spent the last 3 weeks just solely playing that, and it just like awakened that whole love for that style of playing, which is, as you say, is completely different than playing the electric guitar. It's a different world. And not only do I find myself when I'm in that headspace playing differently, the world around me starts to reveal things I would have missed, like watching a television show, and you kind of key in on the acoustic music and just the way that it sounds and the way it's presented in the context of the song. So it's a great headspace to get into. And then to ramble on some more, after I got back, I had an electric show with my John Prine cover band last night, and I played the Telecaster. And there were some, songs where I just found some of the stuff that I have been kind of playing on an acoustic guitar kind of weaseled its way in there. And primarily some flat picking stuff that I was doing, where I would have in the past done kind of like my bastard version of flat picking, where it's this weird alternating thing. I've been focused more on straight flat picking, and I seamlessly integrated a straight flat picking style in a song that would have been my messed up alternate picking. So
that's great.
That's cool. And what am I even talking about?
I have no idea.
I don't know. Too much coffee.
We'll talk more about kind of how it changes your headspace about playing, right? Because on an electric, usually, you've got a lighter gauge of strings and you bend a lot and you play, your playing's different. But talk about how it is for you as a player. Like, how does it change for you?
Well,
in specific ways.
I think I find myself going more for a lot more open chord voicings. I mean, the capo will come in more often in the acoustic guitar because it just gives you those nice open chord voicings, anywhere up the neck. And just, the dynamics that I use are completely different. I mean, it's really, even a great sounding acoustic can be made to sound pretty horrible if you have like a really heavy hand and you don't, key into the dynamics and know your instrument and know how to make it as dynamic as possible. And that's what I love. I spent a lot of time playing this guitar on the couch, kind of really quietly, and it's a very dynamic guitar, and just playing with the way, it sounds. And that's another thing that you can bring over to the electric guitar, just like some of the alternate ways that you'll get dynamics out of certain things. So cool. I love going back and forth between them now.
Nice.
But I also like camping out, like I've been doing for the last 3 weeks. Camping out, and that's my thing when I have, for my allotted guitar time during the day, it's going to be on the acoustic guitar.
That's cool. Yeah, and I notice the same thing. Like I'll go a long time without even cracking the case of the acoustic, and then I'll finally go back to it, and it totally changes how I play, because the strings are heavier, I'm not going to bend those strings. And like you said too, I use a capo if I'm singing along to stuff or just plunking around. But that is one of the things I like about it, just the way it changes your headspace about thinking how to play and what to play. And like I said before, like I do have some trite stuff that I fall back on in terms of licks and things like that. But like you were even saying too, you were focusing on your alternate picking, which I've struggled with over the years. I think we both have kind of just adapted a style that works for us,
right?
To when we need to play a little faster, or
or even the same speed, but get that. I mean, there's some things you could only get with certain runs and lines that only sound correct if they're alternate picked.
Yeah.
And even though one of the reasons, I mean, I can alternate pick, my weird bastard version of like flat picking pretty damn fast, but it doesn't sound quite like that unless you're hitting those alternate, just up, down, right, run, a long run. It doesn't sound quite right. So, and that's the other thing that I found that's highly frustrating I think you and I have been playing guitar about the same amount of time. And, you build a lot of bad habits, but also you seem to think that there's like somehow since you've been playing for so long and you've achieved a certain level of being familiar with the instrument and how to get some things out of it, you think that there's somehow going to be a shortcut to like cracking some code so you can just I'm just going to take this really fast flat picking fiddle tune and put it into my playing. I just got to find out the secret code, and there is none.
Right.
I mean, you and I, we talked about like, when we were into bluegrass or whatnot, finding the YouTube videos with the killer bluegrass people and just looking at that and now like, how do I crack this code? I can play the instrument.
We can do this.
And it's not there. And this last bit of guitar, like hunkered down that I did on the flat top, one thing that was kind of revealing to me is I've just been saying, all right, I want to really get a better flat picking style. So I'm going to start and I'm going to do these things that are uncomfortable for me. I can't do them very fluid fast. And I'm just going to work on those. And after about 3 weeks, I can finally see that it's a little bit easier to do. So there is no way to get around that. You just have to do that. And it's really satisfying to spend that much time with it and now pick it up and go, I can do this 3 weeks later. I can do this pretty easily and naturally. And before it was really awkward and it's going a certain direction, maybe during a certain run, there's one part of the run that, my poor habit, like, flat picking technique gets stepped up. And now after 3 weeks, I can go through that part, no problem. And that's very satisfying. And I imagine, we're kind of focusing on bluegrass, and I'm only focusing on that simply because it's got such a distinct flat picking style. Yeah. And that's what attracts me to the acoustic guitar the most is like flat picking. Yeah. Chords and playing runs inside while you're playing the chords and things like that. Yeah. That's you mentioned that you're into finger style. That's kind of your thing that you've been into.
I love that stuff.
Talk about that. Didn't you just say that you were taking a class or something?
Well, I took a workshop, a one-day workshop with a guy because I love like Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed and Doc Watson and those guys that could play finger style amazingly. And like you're saying, I've been playing a long time, as long as you have, and I've gotten a set of chops as a result of my playing. But then you listen to these guys and go, okay, that's doable, maybe. And then you try it and you're like, shit, no, it's like this is going to take me a long time. And so that's my frustration is I played such a long time and I can do all this other shit, but I don't have the patience to like do the diligent where, like you're saying, like I got to just hunker down and there's no shortcut. I just got to practice and focus on it and do it start in a remedial way because I don't play that way. So, but yeah. So, and again, like we were talking about before about different ways to inspire ourselves as players. We talked about other things in the past, but in terms of acoustic, that's something that one of the times I really enjoyed was when you and I were going down that rabbit hole of, bluegrass,
Bluegrass Odyssey, and 2016.
Because I saw, because I was working on I forget what song it was. Remember, I was telling you, I finally got that run. Remember,
was
and I played for you.
Yes,
that's the one. And I was driving everybody around me crazy.
That's the Stairway to Heaven of bluegrass.
Exactly, you never played that song.
Everybody plays that when they bust it out.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Smells like Teen Spirit.
Exactly, and my wife was like, "Oh my God, you've been playing that," because it's the same run I was trying to get over and over and over again. But that's what you got to do in order to do it right with the cadence and the up and down picking and stuff. But so you're right. That's the kind of thing I need to stick with. Is like I got to get to the point where I've done it enough time where now I can start to see a little improvement. And then that's the inspiration to go, okay, cool, I'm going to keep going down this road. And it was cool when you were telling me that about your latest endeavor with the acoustic, and you just said, I'm going to hunker down and get this up-down picking down and I know there's no shortcut, but I'm just going to stick with it and sure enough, you saw a little improvement. And that's probably cool. Yeah. And you're like, I'll stick with it a little longer.
No, I definitely, I want to bring that in. Because like I said, for years, my bands, I have things that we've played and recorded and whatnot, and if you listen to it, it's like, wow, that's some really fast alternate picking, but it's not really 100% alternate. There's there's some, and I guess some players like I'm down the line, once I get the straight up alternate playing down, I may add more of my messed up style to it just to make it my own or whatever. But initially I want to be able to do runs super fluid, with the classic flat picking, alternate picking. So that's what I'm working on for that. But
and like you're saying, the cool part is, I think eventually, because I think you and I both come from the same place. It's like we just want to improve as an instrumentalist, right? So that we can be a more well-rounded player. And that's what I like to do, is like, it's not necessarily that I'm going to become a great bluegrass player or jazz player. It's just that, like you're saying, I'm going to roll this stuff into what I do, and it'll hopefully make me a little more unique as a player, and also it'll just give me a larger vocabulary, maybe, when I'm playing and stuff, and also just more dexterity, like you're saying. If we get the up down picking really really down, but I mean, we may, over time, it may just morph into our own thing.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And that's one aspect of like jumping over to acoustic guitar to kind of just like light a fire or stimulate some area of your inner guitar player. But it's funny because in the past, acoustic guitar had a more day-to-day use in my everyday life, because I used to write a lot of songs back in the day, so it was always out, and that was kind of its sole purpose, was just to pick it up and get songs out of it. Yeah. And that hasn't been the case for a lot of years. I mean, I've been writing all my songs for the last 5 years on electric guitar.
That's interesting.
I can see that from spending this much time with it, that's still in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And once I get myself through this little, working on technique odyssey, I might start doing that again, like just looking for songs in there, because it's definitely, I can see that it's kind of a richer experience writing because it's more self-contained when you write a song on acoustic guitar, because it's there. On electric guitar, you can figure it out and maybe quickly demo it, but on the acoustic guitar, it's great because it's like, it's more self-contained and you get a bigger picture of what you got. Yeah. So I'm definitely looking to go back to that. And there's that saying that I was thinking about the other day, which is funny because the saying is true, but just like anything else in life, it's not 100% true. It's that if you can't play a song on an acoustic guitar and it have it stand up, it's not a very good song, or it's not a good song. And it's like, that's fine for a lot of stuff, and I would tend to agree with that. But what does that say about bands like Kraftwerk? Right. Or something like that, where guitar isn't like an element in that music. It's like, it's true with a grain of salt, I guess. Well, it's a good thing to think about. And what I was getting at with that is that's a good thing to take with you when you're like working out songs. Like, does this work? If something doesn't work, I mean, because I definitely have songs that I don't think they work very well solely on acoustic, but then they probably would if I spent some time figuring out how to get them into that format. Just trying to ape the electric version might not sound that great. But, taking it down might. So
and I've heard that kind of I don't know, a paraphrased version of what you're talking about. I think but another thing that came to my mind when you were talking is aside from like the strings and the way you don't bend as much, it's just the sound of the acoustic guitar is inspirational, right? Like I guess you like just what you were saying. It's like you play an electric and you can either plug it in and that gets a certain sound, but a lot of time around the house I just plunk on the electric unplugged and it's just you can hear it, but and then you pick up your acoustic and you're like, oh man, that sounds so cool. It's it's like playing a piano. You get this acoustic sound that's beautiful and it's
all these overtones,
inspiring. And so that for me, that's one of the inspirational parts of busting out my acoustic, is just reminding myself how cool the acoustic guitar sounds.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, damn, like you're saying open chords and stuff like that, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is cool. Now I know why I have an acoustic guitar.
It's like a headspace. I mean, you find yourself wanting to watch Ken Burns documentaries.
Exactly. And Martin documentaries on the Civil War.
Just to hear the fiddles. But no, and the other aspect of playing guitar, acoustic guitar, and being in that realm is kind of like the stuff that goes along with it that may not be that fun, but you have to deal with. If you're going to take the acoustic guitar out of your living room or bedroom, at some point you're going to have to figure out how to make it louder. Or if you want to play in a band, which I do, is and that's a rabbit hole that I didn't want to go down, but you had to, and you go down, because for me, and tell me if you agree with this, is anytime you decide to amplify your acoustic instrument, it's just what sort of compromise do I want to make?
Totally.
It's like, there's a lot of people who will talk about, well, this, under the saddle pickup makes my guitar sound like my guitar, only louder. And I don't think that's true for anything. I mean, it can make it sound good, and it can be the acceptable way that you want to amplify your guitar. But even if you think about it, the closest you can get to making your acoustic guitar sound like an acoustic guitar, only louder, is to put a mic in front of it. But even that, I mean, if you take some of the greatest sounding acoustic guitars ever recorded, what you're hearing is some of the sweetness from the microphone that was used.
Yeah.
So it's like everything adds a little bit. So what I had to do when I went through coming up with a way to get my acoustic guitar louder on stage is I looked at, there's like the K&K pickup system, which everybody raves about for, retaining acoustic qualities, which it does really well. But I didn't want to do that because I don't want to stick anything inside this guitar. Yeah, and I don't want to put a hole in the end pin. This is a very minor thing, and it's not because I'm worried about, putting a bigger hole in my guitar. I mean, I've got dents on there. I want this guitar to get played, but there's something about this guitar that I just want to leave it at 100% acoustic instrument and find some way to make it louder that doesn't involve modifying that. Yeah. And what I came up with is I went with a sound hole pickup. And when you're talking about like making compromises when coming up with amplifying an acoustic instrument, the magnetic sound hole pickup, its thing is it's kind of clangy and it sounds electric. It doesn't sound that acoustic. But one of my favorite amplified acoustic sounds ever is the old the Sunrise pickup system, which a lot of players like. I mean, let's see, Richard Thompson, Emmylou Harris, Lyle Lovett, and a million other people, like back in the day, that's what they went with. It was a really good, solid system, but it doesn't sound like their acoustic guitar, only louder. It has its own sound. Yeah. It's sweet, it's a little electric, but it definitely has that sound, and it fits in that style of music really well. Yeah. That's kind of what I wanted to do as my bass sound. So I found this pickup here, which is a DiMarzio Angel, is what it's called, and it's supposedly... It sounds very much like a Sunrise. They're kind of in the same ballpark. And I would tend to agree with that. Cool. I haven't spent a lot of time playing Sunrises, but I have heard them. And this has that same kind of electric sweetness that I like.
That's cool.
So I'm pretty happy with that. Believe it or not, into a tube amp. I mean, I get a sound that I can deal with, and I'm ready to let go that, when I go live, my guitar isn't going to sound like my guitar, but it sounds good, and it sounds rootsy, and it's a sound that I can deal with. And even in a band setting where you need to get louder, it's not going to feed back, and that's something that you have to deal with. But one last thing on this pickup is a lot of people will use this DiMarzio Angel as one part of a two-part system. So they'll use this and some sort of thing? Piezo, or however you say that. Piezio.
Yeah, something like that. I
never know how to say that.
Paisano.
So, and I could see that being really good for that. Yeah. So that's, what do you think about, what did you do when you came to that portion of the acoustic guitar?
Again, I'm lazy and I'm silly. Like, I bought that J180 that is a really cool guitar, and it just came with an undersaddle. I think it's a bag, LR bags or something like that, and it sounds okay.
It does. I've heard that. It sounds really good.
But you make a great point. It's like your acoustic guitar is never just going to sound like your acoustic guitar, only louder. It's always the compromises. It's going to be altered, and it's going to be the sound is going to be altered some way. But I do agree. Like, I've seen recordings or video of people where their acoustic was just mic'd, and there have been two mics on it, right? Like a mic near the neck and a mic a little away from the sound hole, and it sounds freaking amazing.
No, it really does.
So, but to your point, I've also heard great sounding acoustics with the Sunrise pickups in the sound hole, or just those sound hole pickups that cover the sound hole. I don't know. I've seen those too.
Those you might be thinking of feedback stoppers.
Yeah. Right.
But the K&Ks have a really good acoustic sound. But then again, you're dealing with feedback, and I still, even in the K&K, I hear some of that, like that quackiness. Yeah. It's just there, and it doesn't really. I mean, it sounds more like a generic acoustic guitar. Yeah. But I actually kind of like this. Yeah. Pickups a little bit better. And I would love to be able to do just do a mic, but you can't. I mean, if you're playing like, these quality theaters where you have like a great sound
These great
person and
venues,
everything's set up. But you're playing like some drunky club. That's another reason why I decided to go with the sound hole pickup. It's like the most foolproof.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is what's going to be the most functional and realistic for my situation. Yeah.
And also, are you playing acoustic guitar in a band where there's other instruments and you just really need like kind of the percussive clang of the top strings to come out. You might not need as much. There's going to be other things filling in the audio spectrum. Or are you doing like solo acoustic where it's just you and your voice, or you and a voice and maybe one other player? That's where you're going to need something that's more acoustic. Yeah. That's the thing about those, even the K&Ks to me is the mid-range is what, they accent the high and the bass so much that, and I play a Martin D18, and one of the reasons I got that is because I love the mid-range.
Yeah.
On that
You
instrument.
and I are both mid-range guys, I think.
And that's one thing that the magnetic pickup has. It does the mid-range really well. The high end is where it runs into trouble. That's the one that starts to sound like that. Oh, that's a magnetic pickup. So if you had a second source, like either a mic or, maybe like an under the saddle or something like that, you would probably get a really good sound, I'm thinking. But
and it is. I've that's another thing I've been meaning to do. Put it on the list, is do more research about acoustic sounds and stuff like that, because it is important to me. I've seen so many bad acoustic sounds too live that we all have, right? It just sounds like this, almost on the verge of feedback, and it doesn't sound full or sweet. It just sounds like this, just a terrible sound. And that's not inspirational. So that's what I want to do. I want to get an acoustic sound mic'd or amplified that is inspirational, because that's what we're talking about, right? Is how this playing this key. Different instrument is going to inspire you to want to play more of it, or
just come up with a way to present music that isn't like annoying. That's why I said the Music Master bass amp. If I plug this guitar into that, I can get a sound that I could totally deal with just me and my voice, and play dynamically. It responds dynamically really well. So if you strummed it really harshly, you would get a lot of that magnetic pickup harshness. But if that guitar's not going to sound good if you play it that way anyway. Even unplugged, it's like they're dynamic instruments, and like having something that amplifies it, that kind of captures the dynamic is the important thing. And whatever gets you there. But that's, like I mentioned, that's a rabbit hole that's no fun, because you get an acoustic guitar. I love this guitar. It sounds so great in my house. It's beautiful. I'm like, all right, what method of fucking it up am I going to choose?
Yeah, and there's a shit ton out there that you can do.
And there's people that are really happy with their systems, and I bet you a lot of people that have multiple point systems tend to be happier. But whatever works is like I'm down for that. But for me, I've just found that so far the magnetic pickup is the way for me to go. Yeah.
And just playing acoustically too, it was so fun when you and I were playing acoustically together too, because it's different than playing with another electric guitarist. It's similar, and you've got to find ways to play together where you're not stepping over each other. Right. So, but acoustic is still a different animal, and that's what I appreciated too when we were in that phase of our playing, is just getting together around the kitchen table and figuring out how we were going to make these two acoustics work together. And I think we did a pretty good job.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
It was pretty fun. And again, I guess a side note is just that we got into the mandolin too, which is another acoustic instrument, which again is another inspirational thing to do as a guitar player, because I'd never played the mandolin ever until we started going down that rabbit hole, and that was fun. And I got to revisit that because I haven't played that in a while.
Yeah, you have that really cool Kalamazoo.
Yeah, that is a cool one.
You need to dig that out.
Yeah. But again, that's a cool inspiration, because it's it's strung like a violin, and so the chord shapes are different. But like you were saying, once you kind of figure it out and up and down the neck, you can do some pretty cool stuff. That's an instrument too, I must say, that I think doesn't take a long time to kind of at least. You can make some sounds
easy
on it that aren't shitty.
Impossible to master.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not saying you're going to be like, a virtuoso on it, but it's something you can pick up, and once you get a few chord shapes down, you can go, I can play a couple songs.
Especially if you like to make music and record it at home, it's a nice little voice to have to put on your little demos. Yeah, and just to add all kinds of like things. So it's cool. Yeah, I'm like, someday I'll dig mine out, probably soon, because this acoustic phase is probably going to carry over into other aspects. For now, I'm not moving from the get all I can get
camping
from,
on the D18 for a while, huh?
Get all I can get from being like obsessed about
That's
like
a good
acoustic
place to
guitar
be.
now.
Yeah, because that's a beautiful guitar and it sounds amazing. Yeah, and yeah, again, like I guess that's the key, is just to surround yourself with different things if you can, and if you've been playing something, even if it's one guitar, play a different guitar. Whether it's acoustic or electric. But I really have found that is helpful to me as a player. Once I start, because I think you and I talked about it too, sitting there and playing this, you just start play automatically, and you're going, God, I just fall into those same things that I always do. And so that forces me too, just to say, okay, I'm going to go get that acoustic and play it. And oh yeah, sure enough, now I have to play differently. So
I would love to be able to have this one sitting out on a stand or hanging on the wall, but I've got those two little cats, my little monsters, and I know that they would knock it over there. And anytime I have it out, they're all over it. Like, what's this?
Exactly.
And then they start fighting around it, so I have to put
hilarious.
it away. But I try to keep the case easily accessible.
Good.
So, and that's the other thing about the acoustic that's so cool. It's it's pretty bulky, but it is portable. You can take your entire shit with you.
Yeah.
Like I can take this whole thing and make songs and deliver them with me if I'm traveling, especially if you're traveling by car or something, because just throw it in the trunk, and when you show up you have an entire like self-contained unit for creating and deploying music.
Now, didn't you have a Fishman amp too, or?
Oh, very briefly, I had one of those Fishman loud boxes.
Yeah. And
it was cool. It was the smallest one. And I found its deal was it sounded great, around the house, but it couldn't hang with a drummer. I couldn't get it with either magnetic pickup or any other, like, systems I tried with the mandolin and all that other stuff. As soon as you bring a drummer in, it just doesn't have enough oomph. And what I found just very recently is that I very much more prefer the sound of the Music Master bass amp,
cool.
which is really weird because it's not like voiced at all for the acoustic guitar, but what this pickup does and how tubes always sound nice and warm, so I think it's that combined with the pickup that just makes it gives it a really good sound. It reminds me of the old Sunrise.
That's so cool because that amp, you and I both love that amp. And I guess it's another testament to how versatile it is, that little amp, that you can play an acoustic through it pleasingly, and then also an electric.
I'll say, I just did that in my kitchen, which is I have a big kitchen, so, and it sounded great. And I'm like, I'm definitely going to be, and if that works out, I love the idea of carrying my guitar and that. I should add though, I did use a DI that Baggs Para DI with it, and I did do a little bit of EQ, and I kind of scooped some of the mids out.
Oh, that's cool.
But it's kind of shocked me at how much I like the sound of that. It's like I think if I took that and, like I said, one microphone like on the instrument, like if it was a small club and they were set up for that, one microphone in front of the guitar, maybe dialed way back just to catch a little bit of the high strings to make them sound more realistic, it'd be killer. Yeah.
Also, just you and I are rabbit holers in terms of YouTube videos and stuff like that. I always like to watch acoustic players and bluegrass players, and because again that helps turn me on to like different styles or picking styles that I can try to go. And then also, like you say, I think something for me that I got to really get over is just thinking that I can shortcut to where I want to be.
That's not going to happen.
You can't do it. You got to just put in the work.
You have to watch those videos and get inspired and not quit. You have to learn how to do that, because it's like, even and some of the people that are like years and years and years younger that are already there, and also like shifting your goals to be more realistic. Like I love bluegrass music, but I don't have any interest in winning a bluegrass championship or any kind of like sporty element to it. It's just like bluegrass has really cool sounding instruments, and they play cool music, and there's some things within that music that I could find use for, and things that I can do that are within my reach. That's what I'm looking.
And that's the cool thing, like you were saying about Clarence White, is he totally, his style is unique, and he's rolled all these different things into his style, like bluegrass and rock and all this other stuff. So that's a good example of kind of what you're talking about in terms of, I'm not going to win a blue ribbon at the frickin' county fair for bluegrass music, but maybe I can roll this stuff into my style and make it
And that
better.
goes for anything like jazz,
Yeah.
If you want to learn jazz chords or something like that and stick them in your song or whatever, it's cool. Just grab it and go. Grab and go.
Be a progger.
I say.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Speaking of that, a little tangent, side note, as I was watching a cool video of Steve Howe back doing Mood for a Day, that acoustic thing. Remember that song?
No,
yeah,
I don't think so.
But the cool thing about him is, even like we're talking about styles and about proper playing, he just used the old claw 3 or 2.
Oh, so this is a finger picking bit?
Yeah. But because I listened to it, and I'm like, oh, he must be playing, but he's not playing proper at all. But he's playing all this cool shit,
up and a
like,
classic guitar, a cape.
A cape. No, but I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see that he was just hacking this kind of style, but it sounds beautiful, So it's again,
that's
it's
the
like,
thing. If you can get to, if you can get to a point of what you make sounds cool, who cares? But
exactly,
when it comes to alternate picking, at least for me, it's like I gotta be able to do that, even if I end up undoing it and coming up with something messed up.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like Clarence White,
Right.
He was in the Kentucky Colonels that could play really good traditional bluegrass, and then he got in the Byrds, and he's like, I got some stuff left over from this. You guys mind if I use this shit?
Yeah,
and he made really cool stuff. So that's what I'm looking for.
I like it. Yeah, and I think that's ultimately what I'm looking for, is to roll stuff into my style and just become a better player,
Yeah.
Well, that, and that's not so bad.
No.
Right?
There's worse things.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been another episode that hopefully you've enjoyed. Chris and Rick Talk Guitars. Check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all that jazz, and support us, man. We love doing this, and we hope you're listening. Somebody out there. What do you think, Chris?
I think there's somebody out there listening.
You think so? A couple of people?
And thank you.
And thanks so much if you are listening. For putting up with this. Anyway, until next time, adios.
Bye.